Is Steve Jaworski, and the title of his talk is "Where's the Flow?" Steve Jaworski is an associate with Booz Allen Hamilton, supporting a super secret DoD client. I added the super secret. Thought it'd be cooler.
That's fine.
Yeah.
There's not too many in Cleveland. So
exactly.
Not hard to figure out.
He's an information security professional, more than 12 plus years experience in enterprise IT. Some of his security interests are network flow analysis, log analysis, and wireless security. Steve has a bachelor's of science in information systems from Baldwin Wallace College, as you can see here. Poster child. Exactly. When not sniffing packets, Steve presents on various security topics in the Northeast Ohio area. Steve is a SANS mentor and maintains five GX certifications: GSEC, GCFA, GCFW, GCIH, and GCIA.
My company paid for it.
That's right.
Me, so it's the way to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Jaworski.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. All right. I'd like to comment on the last presentation real quick. It was pretty good, right? Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. What really disgusted me about it was how clean that code looked. Didn't it? Where's Steve? Is he even in here to get... Oh, he took off, huh? Yeah, he's not feeling well. So anyway. Yeah, it was pretty clean, pretty disgusting. So anyway, but pretty cool tool. Sorry about that. So for the next 45 minutes, you guys will be disappointed now. So here we go. So where's the flow? Well, we need to ask the all-knowing Wikipedia, right? So essentially talks about net flow and S flow. And I won't read it verbatim, but essentially it's just some long definition. So essentially what's a flow, in my opinion? A flow is, what's going across your network. Source, destination. What is it? What's it doing? How long is it? What ports it's running on? What protocol? That's a flow. The question is what can you do with that flow? What's the security take on the flow? So how many folks here use NetFlow in their environments? A few. Any S-Flow people? S-Flow? Yes. All right. So I like S-Flow better than NetFlow, but I'm biased. So some of the popular flow technologies. NetFlow, that's the biggest one. There's now an open standard, IPFix. Anybody playing with IPFix today? NetFlow v9 is IPFix. JFlow, never really done too much with Juniper Networks Flow. And then S-Flow, I'm a huge fan of S-Flow, and I'll tell you why. They have an old RFC, but there hasn't been any updates to it, but there are newer versions of S-Flow. Just no updated RFC. So NetFlow versus S-Flow. Well, one thing cool about NetFlow is it captures the whole conversation. So if you configure it properly, you'll see the whole duration, you'll see the whole communication, you get a lot of information about it. But one of the other things is the data is sent after the conversation is complete. So the question is do you need the conversation while it's starting or after it's already ended? Just something to think about. S-Flow is only sample. S-Flow is a sampling technology. So S-Flow it only captures every so many bytes. So the default or the fastest it could do is 1 in 128 packets. But it captures the first 128 bytes of a packet. You get the whole first 128 bytes of a packet. That's a lot of information. NetFlow is just the session. And we're going to look at some of the packets. So just to take a step back, essentially I just want to educate you guys a little bit about NetFlow and S-Flow, and then we're going to show how we could do it with security. Other thing cool about S-Flow, it's hardware-based. There's actually a chip in routers and switches and wireless access points that the S-Flow code runs in, and it's free. So what's in an S-Flow packet? Well, like I said, first 128 bytes of data. So you get the full Ethernet header, the full IP header, very cool stuff. And then it collects right off the wire. So whatever the protocol is, it doesn't care. It just captures it and sends it off. You just need a collector that could decode it. Very cool. For those who know me, I kind of hate Cisco. I've kind of learned to hate Cisco over the years. So I'm a huge Foundry Networks fan, now Brocade. So essentially, that networking equipment's probably going to go to the wayside. Sorry, that's a personal opinion. No knocks on Brocade. So anyway, that's the S-Flow packet. So what does a pretty S-flow packet look like? Well, in a simple TCP or in a Wireshark dump, essentially it just breaks it out. Wireshark already has a predefined filter in it to break out the S-flow packet. And one of the cool things, it's hard to see, but you get like I said, you get the whole frame. So we get the source, destination, TCP packets, or TCP flags, essentially. So it's pretty cool. And then what's in a net flow packet? Same stuff, source, destination, protocol, the duration of flows, what ports, TCP flags, all that stuff. One of the cool things NetFlow has that SFlow does not have is the next router hop. That's kind of interesting. Where's this packet destined next? Might be useful. And then version 5, same stuff. One of the biggest things I like about SFlow over NetFlow is I get the MAC address of the source. So in a corporate network, LAN environment, whatever you want to call it, you have a couple thousand hosts. Well, along with that IP address, you get the source MAC. You have the MAC address, you know exactly who that person is. You could find them a lot quicker than if you only had the IP. SFlow 2, along with NetFlow, though, they give you obviously the device that collected the packet, what port it found it on, and it sends that information in the packet, so that helps. But when you have the MAC, it makes all the difference. I came from academia, so the MAC address was the ultimate, right? We go bust students for illegal file sharing because the RIAA said we had to, and we had no money to fight the RIAA, so we had to comply. Student would say, well, that's not my IP address. It's like, well, we don't care. We got your MAC. So we knew what it was. All we did was just match the timestamps. So F-flow agents or exporters, whatever you want to call them, well, the 800-pound gorilla, we all know who that is, Cisco. Brocade, and, not going to list them all. But everybody has some sort of flow technology in their system. I found S-flow. Oh, my God, I'm sounding really redundant here. I apologize. But it's all in their layer 2 devices. HP actually has the first vendor, because they kind of co-created the protocol with a company called Inmon, to actually put in wireless access points. So to start getting flow data from access points, really useful. Plenty of collectors out there. IronView, which is Foundry Networks. LANCOPE. I really love LANCOPE. I think it's kind of the what do you want to call it? Packet flow Cadillac, a packet flow collector, or Cadillac of packet flow collectors. Polixir's kind of cool. I just tested it. One of the cool things about Polixir is that it just runs on a Windows box. The LANCOPE StealthWatch is a whole appliance style system. You got a collector, you got a management console. They're all separate boxes. So if you're doing NetFlow, SFlow, and all kinds of different things, you could have like 3 or 4 boxes. But Polixir is kind of cool. And then Arbor Networks is pretty popular, I think, with ISPs. But I really haven't used it. And then Inmon, the original creator of SFlow, they have a thing called Traffic Sentinel, but not so much of a security piece. I think you see with LANCOPE and Polixir more security usages for flow data. And then sflow.org is a great site for all different kinds of collectors. If any collector collects SFlow, it also collects NetFlow. Some free stuff, right? Free is good. Free is good. So anyway, the SFlow toolkit runs on Linux. Really easy to use. What's kind of cool about that, you could collect your SFlow data, and being in Linux, just pipe it over to TCP dump, pipe it over to Snort, wherever you want it, whatever you want to do with it. NTOP. Everybody's probably heard of NTOP. And then NetFlow, there's a thing called Flow Tools, written by a guy out of Ohio State. Mark Fulmer. That's correct. Thank you, Mark Fulmer. I haven't really played with too many of the NetFlow tools, but, LMGT, fy.com, NetFlow, Anybody ever use that site with their users? Yes, okay, we like that. Let me Google that for you. There's thousands of NetFlow collectors out there. So some free flow generators. So when I was putting this presentation together, one thing I did not have access to anymore was free flow data. Working in an academic environment, going on the student network, I had tons of free flow data. Well, now that I left that environment, I don't have so much of that data. And who I work for would be very upset with me if I took some data. So anyway, there's some pretty cool traffic generators out there that just create random net flow packets. Well, the one I really liked was this net flow traffic generator. So it does version 5 for free, and you could really customize it. You could specify what ports you want in the net flow packet, what protocols, everything. Anything you could put in a net flow packet, you could customize. Autonomous system numbers, source, destinations, whatever you want. So it kind of got me thinking. When you have a net flow collector running, most of the time, these guys just collect whatever data is sent to them on UDP port 5202 or whatever it is, or 5002, whatever NetFlow runs on. Well, if your collector is not restricting what IP address it's collecting data on, you could send some pretty cool stuff to somebody's collector. So something to think about with your NetFlow and I'll just say your flow collectors. Restrict what hosts are allowed to send data to it. Because with these little flow collectors, you could bombard those collectors and put in whatever data you want. It's kind of fun. Flowalizer, that's not misspelled. It's from Polixir. It's not bad. It's okay. Not as customizable. And then there's just another free one, just NetFlow generator. But if you Google for those, they're really cool tools. Like I said, the one I really likey uses NetFlow 9. It's just that you have to pay for it. And we like free things. So old school versus, or still school, whatever you want to call it. So here's what I'm trying to get at with this little slide. Right, you need to monitor your whole network, okay? Well, one of the things you could do is you could throw sensors everywhere, whether they're little, TCP dump sensors and you're doing port mirroring in your switch infrastructure. You got something sitting off your router arm, arm of your router, and you just got a little collector going on. Well, that's going to get expensive and if not tedious to maintain. So that's where flows come in, right? Send flows to a centralized collector or maybe a few collectors, collect that data. Now here's what's interesting. Who thinks they need to see every packet on their network to do good analysis? Anybody in that shop that, hey, we need to see every packet? Yeah, you think so? Somebody argue with me. You're going to argue. Yeah, absolutely. You need to see every packet. Well, you're wrong. All right. So anyway, no. One thing I learned is I always struggled with, well, what if I don't see every packet? Well, you know what? Who cares, right? You're not going to see them all. It's just there's not enough time in the day, the year, your life to find every packet that crosses your network. So that's kind of where flows come into play. And that's what I like about it. Let's just get a snapshot of what's going on. If I find something interesting, then I'm going to drill down more. So it's always good to maybe have a TCP dump box handy. I tell you, that little box Steve brought in would be perfect, right? You could just go throw that out in your network somewhere, span a port, or if you got extra money, an actual tap, right? And plug it in if you need more data. So that's kind of old school. New school, right? Most of your networking devices already have a NetFlow or SFlow technology built into it. Cisco gurus, is there NetFlow in their layer 2 switches yet? Anybody know that? Because I'm having a hard time finding it. So that's one of the things I don't like about Cisco, is that it seems a lot of it's still in the router technology. We need to see that stuff in the switch. That's where a lot of action is happening. And you get to see deeper in your network, right? If you could send all your data from your switches or your wireless access points to a central location at no extra cost except for the cost of the collector, you're going to see a lot more. And supposedly it's a lower cost until you meet with vendors and they give you the quote for the collector, right? And you're like, oh, okay. It's per device or per port, right? That's where they get you. So simple flow design. All right, it's pretty simple. I stole this picture. I don't care. Come get me. I gave you copyright credit at the bottom. But anyway, it's essentially all your networking devices, no matter where they sit, they're collecting data. and they send them off to my little awesome Visio S-Flow collector that I added in. Copy and paste. Pretty cool. You guys should try it. So security, right? We're here to talk about security, not a history lesson. So DNS, right? Mr. Douglas, I'll address him as Mr. Douglas because I don't know him very well. But he's pointed out, DNS servers, whose DNS server should you be using? Well, yours, nobody else's. So one of the coolest, easiest things you could do with flow data is find out who's using DNS. So, because I think, you guys are going to take all these IP addresses, I had to knock them out. But essentially, this is from IronView Network's management tool, IronView Network Manager. And essentially, I have a bunch of hosts, and I just told it to say, hey, tell me what's going on port 53, and show me all the destinations. Well, that's pretty interesting. Some 4 dot whatevers, and some 8 dots, and some other stuff. So here's what's cool. So we dig into that data a little deeper, and we find out I have some users on my network using Google DNS. And then I have some users going to this really odd IP address. Turns out to be some DNS server in the Ukraine. Well, I'm glad that the Ukraine is serving DNS to my employees and students, but I think we could get a little closer. So I don't know what else what their other motives are except to be good net citizens. And then the other thing is private addressing, right? In academia, what's fun is you get to, boy, I miss it. I've only been gone from academia for like 3 months, and I'm still having withdrawals, so you have to forgive me. But you got two worlds, right? You got the student network, which is free and easy and all kinds of viruses and good stuff. And then you have the business side where you actually have to behave yourself and, install antivirus and patch and lie to your auditors that you really did do that. So anyway, right, so moving on. So this is being recorded. Oh, shoot, I forgot. So anyway, private addressing, right, that's somebody who had their system hard-coded, or somebody decided to put a Linksys wireless router on the network because the wireless signal I provided was not strong enough. And they forgot that WAN goes to not them, but they plug the WAN port into the network, or the LAN port into the network, thinking LAN goes to LAN, and start serving everybody else IP addresses. So pretty easy find, right? That's pretty easy, right? Your NetFlow and SFlow packets, they all tell you a destination. Really easy query. So SMTP, who's spamming? One of the things we dealt with all the time was users getting infected with the virus and they'd start spamming. Okay, well in academia, you do not block stuff on the firewall. No egress rules, right? No egress. So when you don't have any egress rules, well, we need a way to figure out who's spamming. So here's a nice, good, clean SMTP flow. On we'll say the left column, are source addresses. On the bottom row, the y-axis, are destination SMTP servers. And all the squares and diamonds mean is the bigger the square or diamond, the more data is being transferred. If it's a diamond, the connection is currently active, and if it's a square, the connection is finished. Now, this is with the LANCO Stealth Watch tool. Okay, so this is one of the custom reports I could create. And so it's pretty easy to understand, right? We have a bunch of hosts connecting to a few SMTP servers. Looks pretty clean. Now, when we get some hosts, again, our source hosts are on the left, or the x-axis. 8th grade algebra teacher would be very happy with me. Y-axis are destination hosts. So it's pretty easy to see who the spammers are, right? They got a lot of freaking email accounts that they have to check every day. It's a lot of work. But no, it's pretty easy stuff, right? Again, this is the LANCOPE tool. So it's pretty easy to find these simple things with flow packets. And again, you didn't need every packet, right? If somebody's spamming, they're sending thousands of packets per second. You only need a handful to figure that out. Some other cool examples with flow data. you get the TCP flags, right? So if somebody's on the network sending SYN and FINs, that's a no-no, right? There should be no reason anybody should be sending a SYN packet with a FIN on it. Flow data, easy to find. And then, just the typical, TCP scans, not necessarily an expert, but, you could easily see Christmas tree scans and all that other kind of stuff. And then another cool thing is SYN packets with data on them, right? You're not supposed, the question is you are allowed to send data on a SYN packet. It's just that most people don't. So that's something else to look out for. So why is a SYN packet, why does it have data attached with it? Now, yes, I said TCP flags, so I apologize, but I wanted to keep it on one slide. IP headers. Again, you have the IP header in your flow data, the size of the header. If it's more than 20 bytes, that's a good question, right? You're allowed to have more than 20 bytes, right? But as our earlier presenters talked about, like source routing, that's going to be in your IP header. Well, that's going to take up more than 20 bytes, your standard 20-byte header. So look for those things. Those are simple. This is all low-hanging fruit I'm talking about, right, is what kind of packet is bigger than the normal 20 bytes. So easy stuff to find with flow data. So again, pretty TCP flag, just Wireshark. Look for the stuff that doesn't look good. Now what's cool is in SFlow, they copy the whole packet, and that's what you get in the packet. It breaks out nice and easy like that. In NetFlow, you get a hex value. And then you'll get a hex value of, 0, I better be smart, but, you get a hex value of 10, whatever that might be. So you got to figure out which flags are set. So SFlow makes it really easy to decode. Another easy thing to detect with flow data is if you have your different departments separated by subnets. Why is the county talking to engineering? Feels like this should come right out of a CCNA book, right? You're learning how to set up a VLAN for the first time, accounting and engineering. Really easy thing to do. You're just sending flow data, and then all of a sudden, somebody in accounting is talking to engineering, or vice versa. That's how it works. It should be that simple. Some really easy stuff to find. And then I was really disappointed today. Nobody talked about virtualization yet, right? What presentation would not be complete without virtualization? Am I right? Come on. Who is not virtualizing today? Oh, you guys are. All right. So anyway, flow technology is perfect for this, right? It's hard to stick a sensor in the middle of your Dell chassis. You might want to stick something else in your Dell or HP chassis, but not necessarily your tap. What's that? Well, I guess we won't necessarily describe it, but you guys look like all unique individuals. I think you could come up with something on your own. We'll call it a pen test. All right, pen test is good. All right. So it's really cool stuff, right? You get some flow data at the networking layer of your hypervisors in your virtualization technology. And considering the fact I'm not aware of any hardware-based switching technologies in virtualization yet. It's still a software-based technology. You really can't afford to capture every packet. You don't have the CPU cycles to do it. So you need some sort of flow technology. So VMware's using NetFlow, which is fine. Cisco's getting their way in there, ruining it. Putting their little whatever switch layer they have in there. But anyway, SFlow's kind of cool. It's all in the open source products. So while Zen's server is not open source, but KVM and VirtualBox from Sun, which is now Oracle. So it's built into there. And SFlow is actually adding some application structures. So you can get like HTTP response times, more of a networking flavor that might benefit administrators. So think about it. Put your hacker cap on as we wrap up here. When you're looking at flow data, all right, the biggest thing to do is just think back to your third grade English class, who, what, when, where, and why. All right? Who are you looking for? Maybe what are you looking for? When did it happen? Where did it happen, and why? If you start thinking of those questions and apply those to flow data, you'll be surprised what you could start to dig out. Like simple things. I wanted to know who was spamming easily. Well, it's pretty simple stuff. Port 25, right? And that's part of the limitations of flow technologies. You're not necessarily going to see packet capture attacks, right? Or not. I'm sorry. Application layer attacks, but you're going to see unique things happen. Like Landcope was trying to do data loss prevention, right? That's another buzz term along with virtualization, right? DLP. Well, the way they looked at it with flow data is, okay, most people are downloading all the time from the net, right? They're typically downloading. They're not uploading. So a way to work with flow data is set yourself a time frame, right? How much time should a person be uploading? Well, essentially, it should only be acknowledgments they send out to their destination, right? So it should be pretty small. So one thing you could do with flow technology is say, okay, within a 10-minute period, our host on our network sent more than 10,000 bytes of data in a 10-minute period. Well, maybe that's a red flag. Maybe that's a DLP issue. The problem is with flow, you can't necessarily see what the data was, but you get an idea that there may be a problem, and then you go take another tool. So just think about what you're looking for, and you'll be surprised at what you could find. So thanks. If you've got any questions or any discussion, that's fine. I don't say much on Twitter, which is probably a good thing. Nothing important to say anyway. And then shoot me an email. So thanks. Any questions? Comments? It was that good? Yeah? Yeah? You guys want to kill... Last presentation I did, you guys want to look like you want to kill me. Is my sense of humor just not there today? You get... What's that? Yeah, nobody's perfect. All right, well, I know you guys are ready for... Yeah, trust me. If they hired... Well, I better not say anything. They're a good company. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot. Since we have a couple minutes here, just want to let everybody know the